This is the 2023 Van Cliburn International Junior Piano Competition and Festival. Welcome to the second day of the quarterfinal round. I'm your host, Buddy Bray.
I'm your co-host, Bridget Kibbe. We are broadcasting live from Caruth Auditorium here in Dallas, Texas.
And remember, you can see a full schedule and list of names, pieces, and what time they play in this quarterfinal round on cliburn.org. And while you're there, you might want to vote for your favorite. There's the Audience Award. There's a special place to click on for that, so do that as well.
You can also visit the social media platforms to read more about all of these competitors, their backgrounds, why they've chosen the repertoire they're performing. We found it so wonderful and edifying to get to know their personalities and their biographies as well.
That is so true, and in talking to them, they're just amazing.
Yes.
Kids. The webcast this year is sponsored by Texas Ballet Theater through a generous grant from Ann T. and Robert M. Bass.
In fact, you too can support Cliburn.org by going to that website and making a donation to help support this webcast and the future talent of pianists across the globe.
Bridget, last night is when it got real, right?
Oh.
The announcement of the quarterfinalists, that's when we were saying last night, that is when all the emotions start coming into play. You start rooting for your favorites, you're sorry for your favorites who didn't make it in, and then now is when you really start to have a following. Kids start to have a following, and a passionate following.
We've already noticed that in the first of the quarterfinals earlier today, the audience reacting to their fan favorites. And I definitely feel invested in the competition at this point. I love the fact that the quarterfinals allow us to have a longer swath of repertoire and time with each of these competitors to really get to know not just their outward facing virtuosity, but also their inward lyricism.
Absolutely. We have 30 minutes in this round in contradistinction to the first round where they only have 20 to present their best stuff. So in this round, there are these very telling requirements, right? The slow lyrical playing, there has to be a piece that demonstrates that, and also the classical sonata. So if you were in their shoes, which do you think you would find the more daunting of the two?
I think the classical sonata is a wonderful challenge in that you really need to showcase a consistent purity of line and also have an understanding of the architecture of a classical work. So I think that just really showcases your intellect, but also there's nowhere to hide behind those pure lines, right?
That's
you mentioned that earlier
true.
today. There really is nowhere to hide. It's really, but that's what makes it so fun. You get to see not just the technical ability, but you get to see a variation in articulation and the way these competitors play.
So our first competitor is shortly to take the stage, and he is Zhonghua Wei, 14-year-old pianist from China. Let's take a minute and meet Zhonghua Wei.
I'm Zhonghua Wei. I'm 14 and I'm from Guangzhou, China. 我觉得很大一部分原因其实就是还是单纯的很喜欢弹琴，然后当然是有我的老师一直在给我很多有趣的作品。推荐我去通过外面的世界的不同的景物啊，比如说娱乐活动啊。能让我在钢琴里面找到更多的好玩的东西，然后就这样子一直下来。
That's Zhonghua Wei playing an etude by Unsuk Chin that he will play that if he makes it to the next round of this. But in this, I'm noticing, Bridget, that he's playing the first book of Brahms' Paganini variations, which are such a tour de force of virtuosity. They just test a pianist in every possible way. Brahms, of course, was known for these big chords, and he was probably a big guy, probably had big hands.
Right.
So there are big stretches, and that is nowhere more true than in the Brahms Paganini variation. So that'll be interesting to see how Zhonghua negotiates that.
Wow.
If he can negotiate an etude by Eun-Suk Chin, he probably is going to have no problem. But I noticed he's also going to give us Mozart and Tchaikovsky, and here he is now, Zhonghua Wei. 14-year-old Zhonghua Wei from China, just a brilliant performance of the Brahms Paganini Book One. You know, as a pianist myself, I just look at that and try to imagine what I was doing at the age of 14.
Oh my
Certainly
gosh.
wasn't playing the piano that well, and that was such a well-schooled performance and just immaculate.
It wasn't,
really.
that's a great word for it. You know, in the webcast, we're so thankful to have this up-close personal look of the hands, and seeing how he physically got around the piano was incredible in that piece. All the voiceovers and his voicing, the articulation, it was so crisp, it was imploring, jubilant, really fabulous.
Just great.
Yes.
And we've talked a little bit about how that theme, that Paganini
Yes.
theme, has just captured the imagination
It's
of so many
true.
composers. LISZT, we've
Yes.
heard, I think Taige Wang it was that played the LISZT
Yes.
Paganini number 6,
Yes.
which is this on this same theme. Schumann wrote variations on it.
Yes.
Ludosławski wrote
Yes.
Rachmaninoff.
Yes.
And just
Even as harpists, we have a couple composers
Oh,
who
really?
have actually set them. We have
Who've used
both,
that
it's
theme?
beautiful, yes.
what is it about that theme that people
Well,
find so charming?
I think you found the hook. It's crisp, right? It has that amazing hook to it, and there's so much you can play with, you know, around that one little short line that sticks with the brain.
Also,
So-
it's harmonically pretty easy.
Yes.
1 to 5, 5 to 1, 1 to
That's
5,
true.
5 to
Right.
1. So there's
Right.
room to play.
With textures and
there.
orchestration and technical bits, for sure.
Zhongwa Wei started with the first movement of the Mozart Sonata in C minor, which has a companion piece, actually, a fantasy that people sometimes will play in front
Okay.
of the sonata, and sometimes not. They
Yes.
weren't composed probably to be
Yes.
played together. But this is a very four-square work by Mozart that can be played in a very four-square way. He didn't really do that.
I felt a lot of spin in his sound. I feel like his right hand has a really lovely, confident approach that has forward motion without rushing. It's like a nice feeling of momentum to it. Very confident, but he looks very poised on stage. It's
Very
this lovely paradox.
poised.
Yes.
I never, again, since we are watching the monitor, we get a very close view of their faces
Yes.
and also their hands. His face doesn't look nervous. His hands don't tremble. They know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. He is the very picture
Yes.
of control
Yes.
at the piano. Just extraordinary.
And he actually has said himself that classical music is my best friend who can comfort me, inspire me, encourage me, and chat with me in my heart. I think that is so sweet.
How nice to have a companion
Yes.
like classical music, and he spends hours with it
Absolutely.
every day. It's about time to meet our next competitor. His name is Taige Wang. He is 13 years old from the United States, and what nobody will tell you except us on the webcast here is he has a piece that he wrote himself called the Toothbrush Rhapsody Trio. Here's Taige Wang.
My name is Taige. I'm 13 years old and I'm from New York. I wanted to be a musician from the beginning, even though before I came to Juilliard, I didn't even practice that much yet. It's really from last summer when I really decided to do this, yeah. What I try to do is because of school and everything, I try to get 3 and 4 hours every day in the school days, and then on the weekends, I just try to practice as much as I can. Competitions, they force you to practice. You feel like you have to practice, and you do end up getting a lot better.
That's 13-year-old Taige Wang from the United States at his quarterfinals performance here at the 2023 Cliburn International Junior Piano Competition and Festival. Really hard to believe he's 13, isn't it?
What a
That's the
triumphant performance by this 13-year-old. What a special talent.
He is a special talent, and I
Yes.
was thinking, you know, because he is a composer himself, an active composer,
Yes.
he has a grasp of structure and how to make a piece which can sound amorphous
Yes.
in the wrong hands, something very organized, knew exactly where it was going. He
Yes.
had an arc, he had a story to tell.
Absolutely had a story to tell. I think he took us every single note from one place to the next. And the thing I loved about his playing is the fact that he has such a breadth of tone. I feel like he has so many tonal options in every single note. There's so much depth there. There's so much core to the sound. And you hear him playing with those textures and taking you from one sound to the next over a phrase. And it starts with one note and the way he articulates on that piano. It's incredible.
A very healthy approach to playing the piano and a very masterful approach.
Yes.
He never seemed vulnerable in terms of playing the piano
Yes.
at all. He was
Yes.
in control the entire performance.
Absolutely.
It's really something to watch.
Really special.
And it was from the first note, actually, of that Chopin Nocturne.
Yes.
I felt also he had quite a story to tell in the Chopin as well, I thought, which, you know, it's a Chopin Nocturne. It has a certain form and it has a certain duration, but he made a story out of the piece.
He did. And you know, he loves opera. He plays the violin. He hears the connection between the notes. You can hear all of that in his playing. And he has the audience in his hands as well. He's very self-possessed, but he's performing. I love that paradox. It's beautiful.
Yeah, he is all business
Yes.
on the stage. He knows what he's doing. And of course, earlier we heard from another stupendous talent, Zhonghua Wei, 14 years old from China, who was responsible for that stupendous Brahms Paganini.
Absolutely. Just jubilant playing. Really just effervescent and so much spin in his sound. I think he kept us with him. And I especially loved his melodic figures in his right hand and how there was always motion in it without, you know, being rushed, but he definitely was taking us somewhere.
There he is playing those Brahms variations now, such perfect technique on display there. This has been a good night so far.
Oh my goodness,
right?
yes.
This first night of the quarterfinals here at the 2023 Cliburn Junior. Remember that you can see an entire list, an entire schedule of the quarterfinalists. Just visit us at cliburn.org.
You can also visit the social media platforms to read more about the competitors, the festival artists that are also here this week, and everything that's happening here in Dallas, Texas.
Now, the audience at Caruth Auditorium has a chance in this 20-minute intermission to visit the Cliburn gift shop, which is all set up in the lobby. But if you're not here with us in Dallas, never fear. You can scan that QR code, which is on your screen right now, or the old-fashioned way, shop.cliburn.org, to bring up all the great new things we have in the Cliburn gift shop this year. Straight ahead in this broadcast, we have an interview with somebody from our Cliburn family. She is 1997 Cliburn finalist, Katya Scanavi. But speaking of Van Cliburn, we thought you'd like a little information about Van and a few memories from two people who knew him well. Take a look.
In 1958, Cold War tensions were at their absolute height. Nuclear annihilation was a constant concern. It was against this backdrop of mutual anxiety and suspense that Texas's Van Cliburn emerged, not only winning the first Tchaikovsky competition in Moscow, but ushering in the possibility for a new generation of cultural exchange between the East and the West.
The Soviets at that time had just excelled in space and at the Olympics with gold medals, and they said, we can even do it in the arts too.
That such a competition would be won by an American, and that's what happened. Van went there. He won over the Russian public. He won over the judges. He played like an angel. I interviewed Vera Gornostaeva, who was a revered teacher at the Moscow Conservatory, and I have a picture in my book of her pointing to her heart, and that was in response to my question, what distinguished Van's playing.
And I remember perfectly well how barely my father and mother squeezed me through the crowd because there were no tickets. And I sat on my father's lap. and heard Van play Tchaikovsky first piano concert. Van Cliburn came to Russia and brought them back some fantasy which Russians lost during this so many tragedies which Russians went through.
I mean, now we refer to him as President Bush, but he was George then. I mean, he said, you know, we're opening the ballpark, and I would like to do something special. Do you have any suggestions? And I said, well, I think one of the best things you could do would be to have Van Cliburn play the national anthem. And he said, well, Van's not going to do that. He wouldn't do something like that for, you know, for a baseball game.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, to perform our national anthem on opening day at the ballpark in Arlington, please welcome Texas's own Van Cliburn, joined by the Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Maestro John Giordano.
Isn't that crazy? It's crazy. And I mean, all of a sudden he stops and he gets up and he grabs the microphone. Oh, say, you know, there it is.
There are so many great things about producing a piano competition. One is to discover amazing new talent. Another is to reconnect with members of our Cliburn family that we haven't seen in a while. One of them is here with me right now, Katya Scanavi. Welcome. You're on the jury this time for the Cliburn Junior, and I just remember so vividly in 1997 you were playing the Rachmaninoff Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini with the Fort Worth Symphony in the finals. True. It was great. What did that feel like to be in the finals of the Cliburn?
Like I was in a dream, because coming from the Soviet Union and growing up in Moscow, of course, we just thought of Van Cliburn and heard so many stories since we were little kids. And both my parents had very vivid memories of how they were trying to get and sneak into the Tchaikovsky Conservatory Hall to hear him play when he was coming to the tour. And yes, I was very lucky, and I felt very lucky to be here. And now it is just a pure happiness to hear all these amazing kids.
They just get better and better every year, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely amazing. They do. But also, it feels like really like a homecoming. It is amazing, the connection I kept with Texas, with Fort Worth, with my host family.
With your host family, of course.
Yes, Molly and Garland LISZTers, who are very special, very, very, very special people.
And still so active in the arts scene.
Absolutely.
I just saw them a couple of weeks ago, so they're just like you remember.
Absolutely. I just went to see them 2 days ago.
Oh, great.
And I really am very grateful. Also, of course, the figure of Van himself, that I had to meet him here, and he was also present throughout the competition, and I never thought of making it or not making it to the finals, but when I finally was there, of course it made me feel very happy, also for my father, who was able to fly from Moscow to hear me play in the finals, and also for Sergei Babayan, who also came, and so we had like a whole gathering here.
That's great. And you delivered. I mean, it wasn't just a matter of luck that you kept progressing and you got into the finals and just played that blazing performance of Rock Prag. You did your part as well, don't you think?
Yeah.
Sergei Babayan, you mentioned, he's coming to teach at SMU
yes, I'm actually very happy.
Yeah, they are too.
Yes.
The area will be the richer for his being here. But you've had other fantastic teachers in your life. There,
yeah.
maybe you've been very lucky. Vera
Yes.
Gornostaeva is a name that we hear a lot about because Vadim Kolodenko, our
Of course.
gold
Yeah, yeah.
medalist in 2013, studied with him, and you did study with her, and you did too.
Yes,
son.
yes. In my postgraduate cycle, yes, like the after college and after I went to study in Paris and then CIM with Sergei, with Babayan, and then I went back to Moscow because I had my kids, and so I was studying with Vera Gornostaeva in for my.
What was so wonderful about her? Why did she have such a reputation as a wonderful, wonderful teacher? Because she did.
I think, first of all, she was a very talented and smart woman, and plus she was really living a long life in music and long life in teaching, and it was like really a direct connection to the Neuhaus tradition and to which I also kind of had before as well, because I studied in school with Vladimir Krainev, whom I also would like to mention because he was also a very lively and very
you know, you're talking a lot about tradition. You're talking about a lot about tradition that started with Heinrich Neuhaus and just got passed down. So important, right, in the Russian School of Piano Playing. It's about the sound. It's about the relationship to the keyboard.
Phrasing, about colors, about rhythmic and harmonic reactions to all of the changes that music brings us.
It's a very, very rich tradition to draw on.
Yeah.
And then you've been interested in another country's pianistic tradition also, and that is in France, and Alfred Cortot in particular. What made you so interested in Alfred Cortot? I am also interested in Alfred Cortot. I think he was a genius, but a very singular person.
But you know, also because I was lucky to be able to live in Paris and study in and do my doctorate in Paris Conservatory, I had the access to the library and to the facilities of Paris Conservatory, and plus I spoke French since I was a kid, thanks to my grandma, and and Cortot was very controversial figure and extremely not a simple case.
Well, no, controversial in a lot of ways. Pianistically, as a conductor, politically, there was a lot of controversy.
Yeah, so that I find it very attractive.
So your doctorate, all of that took place after all of your competition wins and so forth?
Yeah.
So
and
you
also,
did Long Thibaut, you were...
Oh yeah, Long
won the
Thibaut, I was 17.
Just a kid, right? Okay.
Yeah, 17. And then I had Maria Callas Grand Prix when I was also before 20, I think, or 21, something like that. And so I guess Cliburn was my last competition, 97, yes.
Wow. And then you had...
and then I had three kids, so
and then you have
I
kids,
went
and
back
then you have
to
doctorate, and then that's been such a whirlwind, your life. And now you're teaching as well?
I'm teaching in Tchaikovsky Conservatory, but it is, of course, a very difficult subject now because of the war, which started last year, and then many of my students are in trouble, and I don't go there anymore. So actually, that's been very tragic 2 years.
Of course.
Or 1.5. Yeah.
Do you still play a lot?
A lot, I cannot say that I play a lot. I probably wish I do a bit more, but it is also a bit complicated now because I'm out of Russia and I live in Berlin nowadays, and and my kids are now grown up and doing many interesting things and path on their own. So I'm a little bit now going back to my pre-kids life, so probably.
Oh, wow. So all of the kids are out of the house.
Yeah.
That means you can practice again.
Yeah, and also maybe teach somewhere else and look for another. Yeah, so I'm open to what life and music can bring me. But I'm so happy to be back here because this is really like an experience. And hear these amazing kids because really it gives you so much joy to hear a talent, and there are a lot of talented kids here.
I've been saying over and over in the last 3 days, this is one of the happiest things we do.
Yeah.
It brings everybody joy. The kids love it. We love it down here.
Yeah.
The jury loves it. The audience loves it. Everybody
really,
just loves it.
Yes,
So,
yes, and it's so amazing to see how much audience attends this competition, even from the first round on.
Yeah.
So it is just a pure joy, and our jury members are very good colleagues, and we have, I think, a very good group of people. So
great.
Yeah.
We know you have to get back to work. You have one more to listen to tonight before we let you go. Thank you so much for being with us on the webcast, Katya.
Thank you. Such a good time here.
Thank you, Katya Scanavi, a finalist in the 1997 Cliburn competition and a fascinating musical figure. As great as the Cliburn is, of course, it's not the only thing artistically happening around here. Take a look at some of the other arts in Texas.
Now, I guess every town has a flavor all its own. But this one seems to have more than most. Perched on the edge of the prairie, where it can never lose sight of its past and can see the future forever. Fort Worth, Texas, the unexpected city.
Welcome back to the webcast. I'm Buddy Bray.
I'm your co-host, Bridget Kibbe.
Bridget, you have just alerted me to the fact that we have yet another movement of Dutya Sonata. It's the same movement, but another performance of it.
Yes.
And that's kind of interesting. It must be one of those things. I wonder if this happens in harp world. Sometimes pieces they've been around for a while, but they seem to catch on all of a sudden. Does that happen in your world?
Pieces reemerge, they become very popular in competition lists, and then they go back into the ether. But I'm so excited to hear this piece again. I was so struck by how dense it was in moments, and also how the filigree and, of course, the amazing colors throughout.
Dutya is one of those fascinating composers who continue to evolve. Not all composers do.
Yes.
But we were talking about the Flute Sonatine, which was one of his great early pieces, very congenial work, but not very complicated. And this is the chorale variations. I mean, he moves further and further. He was great at a variation set. This young man will also give us works, it looks like, by Rachmaninoff, his Prelude in G major, very lyrical piece, and so that will probably be his lyrical offering. Also a movement of a Haydn sonata in E major, and the very tricky Chopin Ballade number 2,
which we've heard
in F major, very, very treacherous to play. This pianist is Seokyoung Hong, 15 years old, from South Korea. Let's take a minute and meet Seokyoung Hong.
I'm Seokyoung Hong, and I'm from South Korea. I'm a sophomore in a high school, and I'm 15 years old. I try to practice at least 4 hours. If I practice a lot, then I go like 10 or even more hours. My mom bought me upright piano when I was like 5, and she taught me actually. I started to compose when I was about 8, and I still compose. My
teacher recommended lots of competition, and I specifically chose this one because in the senior competition, the most newest two winners are both from South Korea.
Thought you'd like that opportunity to meet Seokyoung Hong before his next appearance here at the Cliburn quarterfinals. Here we go. Seokyoung Hong, 15 from South Korea. Here he is.